Hey, welcome to our channel. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss our latest content.
For 8 years, the life Chloe and I built was my masterpiece of structural engineering. It wasn't a skyscraper, flashy and attention-grabbing, piercing the skyline for all to see. It was more like a perfectly balanced bridge, built not on dramatic pylons but on thousands of small, meticulously placed rivets of mutual understanding. Our foundation was poured in the quiet suburbs of Toledo, Ohio, a mixture of shared routines, unspoken respect, and a comfortable, predictable silence that many might mistake for a lack of passion. They'd be wrong. Our passion wasn't in the fire, it was in the warmth of the hearth, a steady, reliable glow. I am an engineer. I find beauty in schematics, in the precise language of physics that dictates how things stand or fall. My days at the regional construction firm were a symphony of blueprints and stress calculations, of ensuring that concrete had the right compressive strength and steel beams could bear the projected load. I liked the predictability. I liked knowing that if you followed the rules, if you respected the materials, the structure would hold. I applied the same principles to our marriage. Our townhouse was the physical manifestation of this principle. A simple, two-bedroom unit with a facade of sturdy red brick. I was the one who planted the lavender bushes out front, their calming scent a quiet greeting when we came home. The small wooden porch was where our weekends began, with 2 mugs of coffee, mine black, hers with a splash of oat milk and the comfortable rustle of the morning paper. We had chosen, mutually, not to have children. The space in our lives and in our home was filled instead with weekend trips to small towns in Michigan, binge-watching entire seasons of prestige dramas in a single sitting, and impromptu midweek dinners when our schedules aligned. Chloe was the dynamic element in our equation. Where I was the stable foundation, she was the soaring, elegant design that rested upon it. She worked in marketing for a major consumer goods company, and she didn't just work, she thrived. She spoke of brand synergy and market penetration with a natural enthusiasm that I, with my world of concrete and rebar, found endlessly fascinating. She saw the world in colors and taglines, in emotional connections and consumer desires. I saw it in right angles and load-bearing walls. We were different, but we fit. Her energy was the current that flowed through the calm waters of my life. Our friends saw us as the gold standard. "You guys just make it look so easy," my friend Dave once said over beers. I remember smiling, feeling a quiet swell of pride. It wasn't easy, it was intentional. We had weathered the turbulent first few years, the minor squabbles over finances and in-laws, and had emerged into a calm harbor of our own making. There were no visible cracks in our foundation, no signs of stress or fatigue. The partnership was sound. I remember one specific Saturday morning, maybe 6 months before everything changed. The air was crisp with the promise of autumn. I was on the porch, nursing my coffee, watching the way the early light caught the dew on the lavender. Chloe came out, wrapped in one of my old, oversized flannel shirts, her hair a messy collection of auburn waves. She didn't say anything, just curled up on the wicker chair opposite me, pulling her knees to her chest. "Thinking deep thoughts?" I asked. She smiled, a slow, gentle curve of her lips. "Just thinking how quiet it is. It's a good quiet." "The best kind," I agreed. And it was. It was a quiet built of trust. A quiet that said, "I'm here, you're here, and everything is right." I was the architect of our stable life, and she was the vibrant life within it. I had no idea that the very dynamism I admired in her was already drawing up a new, secret blueprint, one that would render my own design obsolete. I never imagined that the ground beneath our perfectly constructed life was already seismically unstable. The first tremor was subtle. It wasn't a crack, but a shift in the atmosphere. It began with Chloe's work. The praise from her colleagues, which she'd always received, became more frequent, more effusive. Then came the internal recognitions, small awards mentioned in company-wide emails that she'd forward to me with a string of excited emojis. I felt nothing but pride. I was the sturdy launchpad for her rising star. The promotions began less than a year ago. First, to supervisor of regional campaigns. I cooked her favorite meal, pan-seared scallops with a lemon butter sauce, and we opened a bottle of champagne we'd been saving. She sat at our small dining table, her face flushed with excitement and wine, telling me about her new responsibilities, the team she would lead. "I'm so proud of you, Chloe," I told her, and the words felt truer than any I had ever spoken. Her success felt like our success. It was another strong, beautiful floor added to the structure of our life together. 3 months later, she became manager of key accounts. This time, the celebration was bigger, a surprise dinner with a few of our closest friends. I watched her hold court, animatedly describing a campaign she had pitched, and my heart swelled. She was brilliant, articulate, and magnetic. Everyone in the room could see it. The final, meteoric rise was to deputy creative director. It was a stunning leap, one that bypassed several senior colleagues. She told me the news over the phone, her voice tight with disbelief and elation. "They chose me, Ethan. Mark Preston, the VP. He called me into his office personally. He said I have a vision the company needs." Mark Preston. The name was familiar. She had mentioned him before, always with a tone of deep professional respect. He was the influential executive, the one who had apparently spotted her talent from the start. "He's tough, but fair," she'd said once. "He really pushes you to be your best." To me, he was a benevolent force, a name attached to my wife's well-deserved success. That night, I filled the house with flowers. I bought her a beautiful leather briefcase she'd been eyeing for months. When she came home, she was exhausted but electric. She dropped her keys on the counter, walked straight into my arms, and buried her face in my chest. "I couldn't have done any of this without you," she whispered into my shirt. "You're my rock." I held her, breathing in the scent of her hair, and felt a profound sense of rightness. This was the partnership. I was her stability, the unwavering ground that allowed her to reach for the sky. There was never a moment of jealousy, not a flicker of suspicion. Her long hours, the occasional weekend work, the new business trips, they were all just necessary components of her ascent. When she mentioned corporate dinners or strategy sessions with Mark Preston and the other executives, I just tell her to enjoy herself and be careful on the roads. I trusted her implicitly. My trust was a load-bearing wall, and I believed it to be indestructible. We started talking about the future with more concrete plans. A second home in the countryside, a place to escape the predictable rhythm of our lives. Maybe I would slow down in a few years, take on some consulting work. Maybe she would, too. We even talked about taking a year-long sabbatical to travel the world. The blueprints for our future were getting grander, more beautiful. All the while, she remained the same Chloe. She still left sweet notes on the fridge door. She still called me love and sent texts in the middle of the day just to say she was thinking of me. The rituals, our Friday pizza nights, our slow Sunday coffees, remained intact. The machine of our marriage continued to run smoothly, oiled by years of familiarity and what I believed was unshakable trust. I saw her increased workload and her growing prestige not as a threat, but as another achievement that was a natural product of her dedication. I never once considered that there could be a shadow behind all that shine. The afternoon it all came down started like any other Tuesday. I was wrapping up a site inspection ahead of schedule and decided to swing by the house during my lunch break. I'd forgotten an important soil composition report on my home computer that I needed for a meeting at 2. It was a mundane reason, the kind of simple, everyday errand that makes up a life. I let myself in through the front door, the scent of lavender a familiar comfort. The house was quiet, still. I walked into the living room and saw her laptop on the side table next to the couch. It was sleek and silver, a tool of her trade, a portal to a world I didn't fully understand. I knew she sometimes reviewed my more elaborate presentation files on it, offering her marketing eye to my engineering data. I picked it up, sat on the couch, and opened the lid. The desktop appeared, a serene image of a beach we had visited on our anniversary. A few tabs were open in her browser. Without thinking much of it, I clicked on the browser icon to open a new window and access my cloud drive. As I moved the cursor, my thumb accidentally brushed the trackpad, minimizing the window I was on and revealing another one that had been hidden behind it. It was a private browsing tab, and in it, an email account was open. A Gmail account I didn't recognize. She must have forgotten to log out. My first instinct was professional courtesy, a respect for privacy hardwired into our relationship. I moved to close it, but my eyes snagged on a line of text. It was the subject line of the most recent email, received 2 days prior, on Sunday evening. The sender's name was Mark Preston. The name, once a symbol of my wife's success, now landed differently. It sparked something cold and sharp in my gut. Why would her boss be emailing her on a Sunday night about the weekend, on a private email account? The hesitation lasted only a few seconds, a brief battle between the husband who trusted blindly and the engineer who had just spotted a fatal anomaly. The engineer won. I clicked. The message was short, but every word was a sledgehammer to the structure of my world. Chloe, just wanted to say thank you again for a wonderful weekend in Lake Geneva. I feel lighter every time we're together, away from the pressures and watchful eyes at the company. Let me know if you managed to resolve the issue with the corporate card for the hotel booking. I can handle it from my end if needed. Next time, no meetings to get in the way, just us. Lake Geneva. She had told me she was at a marketing summit in Chicago. She had texted me pictures of the city skyline from her hotel room. My heart began to race, a frantic, hammering rhythm against my ribs. The air in the quiet living room felt suddenly thick and heavy, difficult to draw into my lungs. I wasn't just looking for clues anymore, I was excavating a ruin. My hands, slick with a sudden sweat, moved on their own. I navigated to the sent folder. It was mostly empty, but then I saw it. A folder on the side panel, labeled with 3 simple letters, CPMP. Chloe Preston. Mark Preston. My breath hitched. I clicked it open. It contained hundreds of archived messages, stretching back nearly a year. I scrolled to the beginning. It started innocently enough. Professional compliments. Great presentation today. You really commanded the room. Your insights on the Q3 campaign were brilliant. Then, the tone shifted. The language became more personal, laced with ambiguity. That color you were wearing today was very distracting. I find myself thinking about our conversation long after I've left the office. Then came the invitations, disguised as work, dinners to discuss strategy, drinks to debrief after a long week. And then, the mask dropped entirely. The messages became openly flirtatious, intimate. There were comments about their meetings, about stolen moments. I got lost in your perfume again today. When we're together, everything else just fades away. I'm counting the minutes until the Boston trip. This wasn't a friendship. It wasn't coworker camaraderie. It was a full-blown affair, a hidden, ongoing relationship, complete with trips and private jokes and a secret language, all happening while I was at home, cooking celebration dinners and feeling proud. The promotion to deputy creative director. Had it been earned? Or had it been a transaction? I pushed away from the laptop as if it were red hot, the metal searing my skin. I stood up, stumbling back a few steps. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. The lavender bushes outside the window, the photos of us on the mantelpiece, the comfortable wicker chair on the porch, every single piece of our shared life now looked like a lie. A carefully constructed stage set for a play in which I was the only one who didn't know my lines. The first feeling was disbelief, a deep, primal rejection of the data my eyes had just processed. Then came the anger, a white-hot surge that made my vision swim. It was followed by a dull, crushing ache in my chest, a physical pain so profound it felt like the ground had given way and I was in a freefall. Chloe. My Chloe. The woman I admired, the partner I had trusted with the very blueprint of my life, was deceiving me with her boss. And I, the supportive, loving husband, had been nothing more than convenient cover. A stable, predictable foundation for her to come home to after she was done building a different life with someone else. The engineer in me shut down. The man, broken and betrayed, took over. My mind, usually a place of order and logic, became a chaotic storm of images. Chloe laughing at something I said, Mark Preston's name spoken with respect, the words just us from the email. They swirled together into a vortex of pain. I thought about waiting until she got home, about confronting her calmly, about demanding an explanation. But the anger was a living thing inside me, a caged animal clawing at my insides. It demanded action. It demanded an answer, now. My hands, moving with a purpose that felt detached from my conscious thought, grabbed my phone. I leaned back over the toxic glow of her laptop screen, and quickly, methodically, took photos of the most incriminating messages. The one about Lake Geneva. The one about her perfume. The exchanges planning their business trips. Each snap of the virtual shutter was a nail being hammered into the coffin of our marriage. Then I left. I didn't take the report I had come for. I didn't lock the door behind me. I walked out of the house that was no longer a home and got into my car. The drive to her office building downtown was a blur. Every red light was a personal torment, a test of my fraying patience. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The images of those messages replayed in my head, each time deepening the wound. The betrayal wasn't just in the act itself, but in the calculated deception. The lies told to my face while I smiled back, blissfully ignorant. The praise I had heaped upon her, now feeling like ashes in my mouth. I parked the car in the visitor's lot and strode into the gleaming, impersonal lobby of her building. It was all glass and steel, cold and corporate. I went straight to the front desk. I didn't have an appointment. I didn't have a visitor's pass. I need to speak with Chloe Allen, I said to the receptionist, my voice sounding unnaturally flat. It's Ethan, her husband. It's an emergency. The word emergency worked. The receptionist, a young woman with a polite, professional smile, looked momentarily concerned before calling Chloe's extension. A few minutes later, the elevator doors slid open, and she appeared. She was dressed impeccably, as always. A tailored navy blue dress, low heels, her hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She was the image of the successful, confident deputy creative director. Her face broke into a brief, quizzical smile when she saw me. Ethan, what's wrong? Is everything okay? The smile vanished the moment she saw my expression. I didn't have to say a word. My face was a mask of stone, and my eyes must have held the full, terrible weight of what I knew. Can we go to the parking lot? I said. It wasn't a question. She tried to ask why I'd shown up so unexpectedly, her voice laced with a sudden nervousness. I didn't respond. My silence was a wall she couldn't penetrate. She followed me, the click of her heels on the polished floor echoing in the vast lobby. When we reached my car, parked in a far corner of the concrete garage, I didn't waste any time. I took out my phone, opened the gallery, and held it out to her. The screenshots were open, The intimate words of her and Mark Preston glowing under the dim fluorescent lights. Her eyes widened. I watched the color drain from her face, leaving her skin pale and waxy. She took the phone from me, her hands trembling so visibly I thought she might drop it. She scrolled from one message to another, her breathing becoming shallow and quick. Then, in silence, she handed it back. Ethan, I need to explain, she stammered, her voice a reedy whisper. It's not what you think. It's more complicated. I held myself together, drawing on some reserve of strength I didn't know I possessed. I looked her directly in the eye, my voice low but firm, cutting through her excuses. Are you having an affair with your boss? She hesitated. She blinked several times, as if trying to clear her vision or find the right words in a language she no longer knew how to speak. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating, filled only by the distant hum of the garage's ventilation system. And in that silence, I had my answer. The lack of an immediate, vehement denial was the confession. The averted gaze was the signature on that confession. In that moment, the image I held of our 8-year marriage, the sturdy bridge, the well-built home didn't just crack. It collapsed from within, imploding into a pile of rubble and dust. There was no shouting, no dramatic scene for an audience. There was only the silent, agonizing pain of a man realizing he had been living a lie in the one place he had always felt completely safe. Chloe finally found her voice, a faint, broken thing, in the cavernous silence of the parking garage. Denying it is pointless, she whispered, her eyes fixed on a point somewhere over my shoulder. You already know. She tried to justify it. The words tumbled out in a disorganized rush. It had started unexpectedly. There was no plan. She'd felt pressured by the competitive environment, vulnerable. She said Julian had approached her when she was desperate for recognition, that his attention felt like mentorship at first. She spoke of a dinner after a results presentation, a first kiss she claimed to be shocked by, a line she meant to draw, but never did. I just listened. I didn't interrupt, didn't argue. I stood there, still as a statue, and let her words wash over me. Each one was another piece of the puzzle I never wanted to solve. She said she still loved me, that everything had spiraled out of her control. The words were meaningless. They were just noise. The foundation was gone. The rest was just decoration falling to the ground. When she finished, there were no more questions to ask. I took a deep breath, the cold, damp air of the garage filling my lungs. I took my phone back from her trembling hand. I won't be coming home tonight, I said. She tried to move closer, her hand reaching out for my arm. Ethan, please, we need to talk about this. I stepped back, out of her reach. Just respect this moment, Chloe. I need to leave. And I did. I got in my car, turned the key, and drove away, leaving her standing alone amidst the concrete pillars. I didn't look back. I drove to my parents' old house. They had retired to Florida years ago, but had kept the place, leaving it in my care. It was empty, a museum of my childhood. I let myself in, and spent the night in my old bedroom, staring at the ceiling. I didn't sleep. My mind, the engineer's mind, which had been offline, came back with a vengeance. It began to process the failure. It spun through 8 years of memories, trips, promises, inside jokes, celebrations, and analyzed each one for flaws, for hidden signs of stress I had missed. Everything was now tainted. The happy memories were no longer sources of comfort, but evidence of my own blindness. The betrayal was a catastrophic structural failure, and when a structure fails, you don't just patch the cracks. You assess the damage, and then you perform a controlled demolition. The next morning, after a night of staring into the abyss, I woke up with a cold, hard clarity. The grief was still there, a dense, heavy mass in my chest, but it was now encased in something else, purpose. My first call was to a lawyer, the most ruthless divorce attorney in the city. I explained the situation with clinical precision and scheduled an appointment for that afternoon. I didn't want to wait for my emotions to cool. What I felt wasn't passing anger. It was the certainty of a surveyor condemning a building. While the lawyers began their work, drafting petitions and exchanging emails, I began my own. This story wouldn't just be another quiet divorce. My pain wouldn't be collateral damage in her pursuit of ambition. Their betrayal, built on secrecy and an abuse of power, would have a price. It would be an example. With the methodical precision of drafting a complex blueprint, I worked on a new project. I printed copies of every incriminating email. I compiled a timeline, cross-referencing the dates of their trips with Chloe's work calendar and the excuses she had given me. I highlighted the part about using the corporate card to book their hotel in Lake Geneva, a clear misuse of company resources. I prepared 2 identical packages. Thick manila envelopes, sealed securely. They were not filled with emotion, but with cold, undeniable facts. This wasn't about revenge in the heat of the moment. This was about balance. It was about consequences. I was an engineer, and I was about to demonstrate that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. The first package was addressed to the ethics committee at Chloe's company. I sent it via a courier service, anonymously, but with every detail needed to guarantee the material's authenticity and trigger a full-scale investigation. This wasn't office gossip, it was a formal complaint of misconduct. The second package was addressed to Mrs. Lauren Preston, at her home address, which I found through a simple public record search. I sent it via registered mail, requiring a signature. I wanted to be certain it reached her hands, and her hands alone. After the envelopes were sent, a strange calm settled over me. I had designed the demolition. Now, all I had to do was step back and watch it fall. The fallout began within a week. I wasn't in the rooms where the decisions were made, but I could feel the shockwaves. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Eleanor, kept me updated on the whispers she heard through her professional network. At Chloe's company, my anonymous package landed like a bomb in a glass house. The board met behind closed doors. A secret, internal investigation was launched. Chloe, completely unaware that the blow had come from me, only knew that the atmosphere at work had suddenly turned Arctic. Conversations would stop when she approached. She was left out of strategic meetings. Projects she was leading were quietly reassigned to other managers. The friendly smiles of her colleagues were replaced by cold, distant stares. She was being professionally quarantined. On the other side, Mark Preston's world was imploding. The charismatic, untouchable vice president suddenly found himself on the outside looking in. The CEO, once a close friend, now treated him with a frigid formality reserved for an imminent liability. The final, decisive blow came from his home. Lauren Preston, from what I later gathered, was not a woman who screamed or cried. She was a woman who acted. Upon receiving the package of evidence, she didn't confront her husband. She simply hired the best family lawyer in the state. Within a week, she filed for divorce, left their sprawling home with their 2 children, and her legal team moved to freeze half of their assets. Mark Preston, the man who had everything, suddenly found himself alone in a cold, rented apartment, with his credibility shattered and his fortune halved. The company, desperate to avoid a public scandal, didn't fire him. They did something far more humiliating. Under the guise of strategic restructuring, they transferred him to a branch in Boise, Idaho. He was given an irrelevant administrative title. It was a corporate execution, a demotion so profound that everyone, especially him, knew it was a career death sentence. Chloe didn't escape. With no political capital left and no support at work, she was given an offer she couldn't refuse, an amicable exit. It came with a reasonable severance package and a strict non-disclosure agreement. She accepted because she had no other choice. When a reputation is destroyed behind the scenes, the walls close in before you even hear the sound. The impact on her career was devastating. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that she was interviewing constantly, but the doors kept closing. Her resume was impressive, but the unspoken story that now followed her was toxic. Some companies admitted in private conversations that they didn't want to import problems. Others offered her junior roles with salaries that wouldn't even cover the rent on her old life. Within a few months, Chloe, the once admired deputy creative director, was doing freelance consulting for small firms, a ghost of her former professional self. She left the townhouse we had shared our lawyers, handled the sale, and moved into a modest, impersonal apartment on the other side of the city. The life she had built on a foundation of lies had crumbled into dust. I watched all of this from a distance, not with laughter or celebration, but with the calm, detached satisfaction of an engineer observing a successful demolition. The flawed structure had been brought down cleanly, without damaging the surrounding area. I hadn't needed to raise my voice, to have screaming matches, or to engage in public confrontations. I had simply let the truth, revealed at the right time to the right people, do the work for me. Mark Preston lost his marriage, his position, and his influence. Chloe lost her reputation, her career, and her social circle. They had both ended up exactly where they belonged, forgotten. For me, it was never about blind revenge. It was about balance. They had broken something fundamental, a covenant of trust, and the laws of physics, both emotional and professional, demanded a reckoning. Now, they were paying the price. The divorce was finalized 6 months after that terrible Tuesday. I sold the townhouse. Walking through its empty rooms for the last time was a strange experience. The scent of lavender was still there, a ghost of a life that no longer existed. I didn't feel sadness, just a profound sense of closure. That chapter was over. The site was cleared, ready for something new to be built. I moved into a modern apartment downtown, a place with clean lines and large windows overlooking the city, a place with no shared memories. I focused on my work, pouring my energy into designing bridges and buildings that were strong and true. There was a comfort in the certainty of it, in knowing that steel and concrete, unlike people, did not lie. Sometimes, late at night, I think about trust. I used to see it as a solid foundation, something you pour once and build upon forever. I see it differently now. It's not a static material. It's a constant, active force, like tension in a suspension cable. It requires maintenance, attention, and honesty to hold its strength. The moment you neglect it, the moment you introduce a flaw, the entire structure is compromised, waiting for the right amount of stress to collapse. I don't know what the future holds. I'm not looking for love, not yet. I'm rebuilding myself, far from the wreckage of my past. But I carry with me a cold certainty. If anyone ever asks me why my marriage ended, why it all came down this way, the answer is recorded. It exists in the documents I sent, in the fallout that followed. It is cold, undeniable, and absolute. It is the perfect, unforgiving logic of a structure that was simply not built to last.